God's standing outside Pace University, smoking a cigarette, waiting for Anya. She'll be coming out of the school any minute. God thinks about how long it'll be till he sees her. It's been so long already since he left her at the C train at Ralph Avenue. He can't even remember what she'd been wearing. And does she have black hair or brown hair or blonde hair? No, not blonde. Definitely not blonde, he thinks. Yes, that's for sure. But as for her actual hair color, from where God's standing, near the entrance to the Brooklyn Bridge City Hall subway station where the 4, 5, 6, J, and Z trains stop, he can't see the mouth of the pedestrian walkway of the Brooklyn Bridge. If he could, however, he'd have seen God get taken away by the police. But he can't. He just sees his cigarette and his dirty fingers, and he feels how his skin is tight and limp on his face, and how his jaws are begging to clamp down upon flesh, preferably the flesh of a human, preferably the flesh of a small baby. Anya comes out looking like a fit, fashionable New York City student. God smiles. Maybe he can clamp down his jaws upon her flesh. She comes up to God and looks at him with an amused expression. "You got another square?" God produces one and gives it to her. She puts it in her mouth and looks at him expectantly. He produces a lighter and lights the fag for her. They stand there looking at each other for a few moments. The wind is dry and unforgiving. It's cold, the kind of cold that withers and puckers and chagrins and rebuttals. "Where do you want to go?" says Anya, letting a mass of smoke out of her lungs. "The Museum of Modern Art." She blinks. "Are you kidding?" "No, come on, let's go." But she doesn't budge. "Why do you want to go to the MoMA?" "How was your day?" "Don't try to change the subject. Do you really want to go to the MoMA?" "Yes, we can take the yellow train from here and then transfer to the M at Herald Square." "I know how to get there," says Anya coldly. "I just don't really want to go. I've had a long day and I kind of just want to collapse at home." "No, you don't." God takes her by the waist and closes in on her. He kisses her all over, on her cheeks, on her forehead, on her mouth, on her neck. At first she finds him repulsive, this scraggly, thin, bulging old man. But his kisses cause her to bloom, and soon she responds enthusiastically with her tongue and lips. "Ugh," she moans in his arms. "Ugh," he sighs, holding her tightly and snaking his hands up inside her shirt so that his hands are touching her bare skin, the play of her body. They break apart, and Anya looks at God, and God is young and vital, and God's face is sunlight, and God's eyes are tears, and God's laughter is foreign, and God's life is daughter. He takes her arm, and she happily goes with him. He takes her to the Starbucks just down the block. "Starbucks?" she laughs. "Why are we at Starbucks?" "For product placement, of course. And I want to buy you a coffee." He fingers her waistband in delight, and she twinkles up at him. There are too many cars going by on Park Row, and the sky is only visible in the few places where skyscrapers haven't been built. The fractured sky is God and Anya standing in line at Starbucks, their feet twitching and tapping around of their own accord, their senses limited to their own subjective perceptions, ignoring the millions of other sentient beings around them on the island of Manhattan and the greater metropolitan area and the island of the Americas and the world. Their bodies can't produce a tear for everyone who suffers, so they are left frustrated, as the floors beneath them are almost clean, but off of which one shouldn't eat. "What can I get you?" says a woman who's said this too many times. She's a nice-looking lady, and she's loved dearly by many people. But in her role as a barista, she can only be thought of as the unremarkable fulfillment of desire. By God and Anya, her makeup appears garish. She speaks much too quickly. Her long, synthetic fingernails make too loud a clacking sound as she taps the counter, waiting for the end of her shift. She's always tapping, just like the people in line. If everyone's always tapping, then what's the point of anything? Anya looks at the woman for just a split second too long, wanting to say something other than, "A small black coffee, please." But she can't because the barista is being paid to say, "What can I get you?" And the barista looks at Anya with a dead expression that says, "Yes, hun, I know your intentions are good, but if they were really so good, you shouldn't have even come here in the first place." And Anya returns back to her, "Yes, but God made me." And the woman fires back, "Hun, that's what I hear all day long by hundreds of people just like you. Funny, ain't it? How God can make us do all sorts of things we really wish we wouldn't do." Anya retreats, and the barista looks at God expectantly. "Yes, I'd like the same," says God briskly. "And leave some room for cream." "That'll be this many dollars," says the barista, whose name they now notice from her name tag is Bianca, dryly. God and Anya don't hear the total because they don't care what it is. God doesn't care because he knows he has enough money on his credit card to pay for it. And Anya doesn't care because she's not the one paying for it. God slips his credit card into the payment module. There's a moment of tension as the three of them, God, Anya, and Bianca, think of intercourse. Author's note. At this point, I indulged in a lengthy explication of Taoist non-dualism, which I've decided to cut out for the sake of brevity. If you'd like to read it, just let me know. With bated breath, they all watch the card slip into the port of the payment module, and they watch God press the little buttons, putting in his PIN number, personal identification number. You don't usually have to put your PIN number in at Starbucks because they just default charge you as credit to make the lines go faster, but I'm going to leave that detail there because it's my will to do so. And now the moment is over, and Bianca says, "Would you like a receipt?" And God says, "No thanks," and pulls out his card, and Bianca says, pointing to the left, "Your drinks will be ready on the counter over there. Have a nice day." God and Anya nod pitifully at Bianca, who just kind of grimaces in resentment, and go over to wait for their coffees. It's still gray out. Will it ever be sunny again? Their coffees come quickly since they're just black coffees, and God picks his up and takes it to the condiment station where he pours in a little half and half and 3 sugars. Anya takes hers black and looks at God as he prepares his drink, smiling slightly with her head cocked imperceptibly to one side. She smells her coffee and her heart smiles to smell the coffee. Her heart, and the hearts of everyone who drinks coffee, knows that after its coffee has been drunk, it will have to frown. But it doesn't care because it so loves to let the coffee make it smile for a little. They go back out into the cold, holding their coffee cups in one hand and each other's hand in the other. The people in their cars and the other people walking down the sidewalk don't care about Anya and God don't care about the people in their cars and the other people walking down the sidewalk. But a voice within all of them, the people in their cars, the other people walking down the sidewalk, and Anya and God, wants so badly to care that it's just about ready to murder everything. They walk through City Hall Park, still holding hands. There are some sculptures placed here and there that were paid for by the city and whose creator was ordered to create something not too thought-provoking. The creator frowned a little when he received this order, but thought about how he'd like to live in a nice apartment in Williamsburg and decided that artistic integrity was less important than his finances. God and Anya's coffees are still too hot to drink, but God's is going to cool down sooner than Anya's since he added cream to his. They don't really even want to be holding hands. They don't want to be walking together. They want a number of things they can't have, like to be the breeze and to eat the ocean and to laugh without having to stop to draw breath and to watch the sun as it constantly sets and rises all over the world and to dream the memories that they've forgotten and to be happy. But they hold hands because they can't have the things they want, and they don't talk about their deflated breasts, although it's clear when Anya looks into God's eyes that the handsome youth beside her masks a sorry old degenerate. And it's clear when God looks at Anya that he isn't whom she thought would walk beside her, and his mouth doesn't taste like her fantasies. "You want a cigarette?" he says to her. She nods wearily, knowing that the cigarette he'll give her and the coffees that they drink are just mirages, that they're not really smoking cigarettes, that they're not really drinking coffee, that they're not really walking through City Hall Park, that he's not really God. They come smoking out of the park onto the wide sidewalks of Broadway. The yellow train is just a few paces away. "God?" says Anya in a quiet voice, exhaling rough victims. "Yes, Anya." "How long were we in Starbucks? How long were we in the park just now?" They stand near the entrance of the subway station, savoring their fags. "Why do you ask?" "Just because I know it was only supposed to be a few minutes at most, but I was just thinking about how I don't even know what a few minutes are. I don't know what anything is. I've just been feeling very strongly that metaphysics implies not only a realm of being beyond our own realm, but also an infinite number of realms of being beyond each subsequent realm." "What do you study in school, Anya?" "Philosophy, can't you tell?" "Yes." There's an awkward moment during which Anya once again feels that she's very much supposed to run away. The smoke in her lungs is the too colorful stick of a lollipop caught in her throat. "Anya, let me ask you, are there any realms to which we would seem metaphysical?" Her eyes light up. Yes, I think there must be." "So then, where are we situated on the tapestry of existence, which is bounded on the one side by the absolutely concrete and on the other by the totally abstract?" "I don't think we can know without experiencing other realms. To us, we seem to be right in the middle of the concrete and the abstract, but I'm sure that all the other realms would argue the same." "Why, could it not be that we are simply right in the exact middle?" "I suppose, although it seems unlikely." "Why? There has to be a middle realm, doesn't there? So why not us?" "I guess that would just seem too easy." "Let me ask you, is there life in the other realms? Are there people in the other realms?" "I don't know. I have no way of knowing." "Couldn't it be that this realm, this experience of reality, this universe exists because the concrete and the abstract are conceivable, and the concrete and the abstract can be conceived because this realm exists?" "Perhaps. I'm not convinced. What is the origin of us, the concrete and the abstract? They can't have created each other. Something else had to create them both." "You're right, but you wouldn't believe me if I told you what it was," says God, staring off into the distance, watching the vapor billow out of a chimney extending out of a manhole. "What? Are you going to say that you're the origin of everything?" "Well, yes, of course that's what I was going to say." God moodily tosses his fag down and steps on it. Anya follows suit. They tramp down the stairs and hop the turnstile. An R train pulls into the station in 4 minutes, which they pass by staring hard at each other without saying anything. But no matter how hard they try, the 4 minutes pass just the same. They can't steal even an instant, nor can they leave their bodies as long as they're alive. "Cut out the bullshit and tell us who you really are," says a police officer who eats way too much junk food. "I told you already, I'm God." "I swear to God, if you say that again, I'm going to lock you up in solitary confinement," says another police officer who eats way too much junk food and masturbates to pornography for an hour every night. "You swear to whom?" smiles God. "Listen, lady, we're not gonna play games with you, okay? You murdered a police officer, you crazy bitch. You're looking at a life sentence without parole, without nothing. So why the fuck are you playing games with us?" says a third police officer who eats way too much junk food and masturbates to pornography for an hour every night and thinks that white people are the best people. Actually, there aren't really 3 different police officers in the room with God. There are really just 3 copies of the same horrid program, so we won't make a distinction between them. We'll just call them all police officer. Now tell us who the fuck you are! Let me ask you a question, says God. Do any of you believe in God? What do you even mean by that question? Says police officer. I mean, do you think that God exists? Well, you'd have to define God. God is infinity. Why, that's hardly a definition. If you mean by infinity that which goes on forever in all directions, then sure, I believe in it. But what are the implications of such a thing, and how does it relate to God? Well, you said it. Infinity goes on forever in all directions. But what exactly is it that goes on? Surely it can't just be empty space. Otherwise, there'd be no difference between infinity and nothing. I'd say that infinity is different from nothing in that what goes on forever is energy, mass, substance, a unit, like a number. Infinity is 1 added to 1 forever. But from where did the original one come in the first place? And from where does each subsequent one come after that? Well, poets, philosophers, scientists, mathematicians, and theologians have been trying to figure that out for millennia. It's not an easy question. Actually, it is an easy question, and there have been all sorts of people throughout history who have found the answer, and some of them belong to the types of people you listed, but all of them shared one common trait, that they were able to get over their egos and just accept the truth that they'll never be able to attain the Godhead. The first one is a miracle, as is every subsequent one thereafter. Water starts leaking in through the cracks where the bricks are held together with mortar. What do you mean, a miracle? A divine act, an act of God. But how could God be the cause of God's own existence? God shakes her head with laughing eyes. Even God cannot attain the Godhead. Police officer is kind of at a loss for words. It goes up and refills its styrofoam cup of coffee and has a handful of trail mix. It talks about nonsense with police officer. It goes and urinates. Finally, it comes back into the room where they've been interrogating God and sits down. The water's still leaking and is now almost an inch deep at their feet. Even still, says police officer, none of that proves that you're God. Well, actually it does, but I understand if you're not ready to get over your ego yet. What would, to your satisfaction, prove that I'm God? You'd have to perform a sufficiently miraculous miracle. What do you consider sufficiently miraculous? I don't know, bitch. Damn, just show me a miracle and I'll tell you if it's good enough. Their feet are submerged by the water now. Look at me. Can you see that I am a distinct object? Police officer nods. And can you see that the wall behind me is distinctly not me? Police officer nods. And you would call me the foreground and the wall the background, would you not? Police officer nods. Then can you see that, though I am in front of the wall and the wall is behind me, we are continuous? Police officer nods hesitantly, suspecting where this is going. And though you can't see yourself, would you agree that you are also continuous with the wall and me? Police officer nods. Then am I any different than the wall, or are the wall and I simply seemingly different aspects of some greater system? No, you're no different than the wall, says police officer with dread. So then, it follows that I'm no different from you either, doesn't it? Yes, it follows. So then, who am I? You're God, bitch, damn it. Thank you. Police officer releases God and gives her an apple as a snack for the train ride home. The police station is soaking wet. Police officer escorts God out of the police station. The media had heard about this story of a murder on the Brooklyn Bridge and has been thronging about the police station, waiting for any updates on the killer. When God comes out, escorted by a police officer, the reporters almost don't even recognize her as the killer, but someone shouts out, "There she is!" And all the cameras start going crazy and people are yelling so many questions at her. The only question God hears is this little Asian woman with short black hair yelling out, "Why did they let you go?" And God replies, "Because I'm God." So then the Asian lady takes a bunch of pictures and screams, "Do you mean to say that God doesn't have to be held responsible for murder?" It starts to rain from inside God. "Of course not," says God. "Why should I be?" The Asian woman spits, Because there is a higher law which even God cannot violate. It is the law of justice, the law that innocence and goodness shall always prevail." "No, you're wrong. There is a higher law, but it by no means supports your opinion that I should be punished for the murder of a police officer. It is the law of death, that death shall consume us all." With that, all the reporters disappear, the police station disappears, the water disappears, Manhattan disappears, and all of the universe disappears. All that's left is God with a bullet hole in her chest and some music that's playing too faintly to be heard. She's alone and there aren't any colors. She's clutching her chest as no blood seeps from the wound. She's trying not to look around, but her eyes are moving. She can't close her eyes. She can't close her eyes. She doesn't see anything because she's in too much pain. But this one thought keeps occurring to her, and every time it does, she feels like it's the first time she's thought it. The thought is that she's dreaming, and immediately after having this thought, she asks herself, "But how much of it is a dream? If I haven't really been shot, then am I really lying in bed? If I'm not really lying in bed, then am I really God?" But every time she gets that far in her reasoning, she's seized by unfathomable pain. She gasps and cries out, and she's alone. She's going to die from her injury, and she's already dead. And she's already dead. So she tries to stand up, but she's trapped in a box, just a little bigger than herself. And the box doesn't have any sides. And she collapses back down into the fetal position, and she realizes that outside her box are an infinite number of other boxes filled with all the other people that God has killed. And she realizes that she's not God. But as soon as she has this thought, she forgets that she's had it. And she sees the skyline of Chicago from Millennium Park, right beside Lake Michigan. And it's a sunny day, and the lake is glittering, and the trees are breathtaking, and she can't look around, but the view is enough for her. And there's a small smile on her face, and she can almost feel the special boy touching her belly. But then she's back in the box, and she's alone, and someone has shot her in the chest. And this thought occurs to her: "I must be dreaming."